The car engine hums to a stop, and I sit there, staring at the house I swore I'd never come back to. It's the same as always: creamy beige walls, rose bushes trimmed to unnatural perfection, a wooden gate so polished it gleams under the streetlights. This place is a time capsule, frozen in a way that makes my stomach twist. I'm Ava Mitchell, 33, a mental health counselor now, but this house doesn't know that version of me. To this house, I'm still the 17-year-old girl who cried in the hallway, who begged to be believed, who was told she was unstable. Above the porch, a glittery banner sways in the evening breeze. Congratulations, Lily and Caleb, my little sister's engagement party. I clutch the USB in my purse, its edges pressing into my palm like a promise. I'm not here to celebrate. I'm here to set the truth free. I step out of the car, the cool Chicago air brushing my face, and walk up the path. The front door feels like it might swallow me whole, but I push it open. The noise hits me first. Clinking glasses, laughter that's too bright, voices weaving through the air like threads in a tapestry I was never meant to fit into. Heads turn as I cross the threshold, then snap back just as fast, as if looking too long might burn them. I feel their judgment, sharp and electric, humming under their polite smiles. She looks better now, someone murmurs behind a wine glass, their voice low but not low enough. Is she okay? Another whispers, the word okay dripping with pity. I smile, not for them, but for me. This time I hear every word, and I don't shrink. Elaine is the first to approach, gliding toward me in a navy silk dress that hugs her like armor. I don't call her mom anymore, haven't for years. Her smile is flawless, a masterpiece of pretense, but her eyes are knives. Ava, you made it, she says, her voice honey-sweet, the kind that fools everyone but me. She leans in, close enough for me to smell her jasmine perfume. This night is for Lily. Let's keep it pleasant, shall we? It's not a request, it's a warning, the same one she's been giving me since I was old enough to question her. I nod, my lips pressed tight, and brush past her. I don't owe her an answer, not tonight. The living room is a sea of faces, cousins, aunts, neighbors, all orbiting the star of the evening. My sister, Lily. She's 26, a freelance journalist with a knack for finding stories in the quietest places, though she never found the courage to tell mine. She's standing by the dessert table, glowing in a white dress, her hand entwined with Caleb's. Her fiancé looks at her like she hung the moon, and for a moment, I'm jealous. Not of him, but of the way she seems to belong here, in this house, in this life. She spots me and freezes, her smile flickering like a candle in the wind. Ava, you came, she says, rushing over to hug me. Her arms are warm, but the embrace is quick, like she's afraid I'll break. I didn't think you'd... She trails off, her eyes searching mine. Miss your engagement party? I finish for her, my voice steady. Wouldn't dream of it. She laughs, but it's nervous, and I know she senses something's off. She's the only one who never called me unstable, but she never stood up for me either. I drift through the party like a ghost, nodding at small talk, dodging questions about my job. Mental health counseling, how rewarding, an aunt says, her tone implying it's a miracle I'm functional at all. I let it slide, my fingers brushing the USB in my purse. It's my anchor, my proof, my weapon. I pass the staircase where I used to sit, 17 and sobbing when Elaine screamed that I was lying about her lies. I walk by the dining room where she told the whole family I made things up for attention. Her voice so calm it was terrifying. George, my father, stood there then, saying nothing, his silence louder than her words. He's in the corner now, nursing a drink, his eyes fixed on the floor. He doesn't look at me, and I don't expect him to. The party hums along, all champagne and fairy lights, a perfect facade. Elaine is in her element, flitting from guest to guest, her laughter a performance that makes people lean in, desperate for her approval. She's the mother everyone envies. Elegant, composed, the woman who throws parties so flawless they feel scripted. But I see the cracks. I see the way her smile tightens when she glances at me, the way her hand lingers on Lily's shoulder like she's claiming her. I sip my water, counting the minutes, waiting for the moment when the room will shift from celebration to reckoning. Lily and Caleb are the center of it all, fielding hugs and congratulations. She looks happy, genuinely happy, and for a second I waver. This is her night, her moment. But then I remember the years I carried their lies, the years I doubted my own mind, the years I lost to their version of me. The USB feels heavier now, not with weight but with purpose. I didn't come to ruin her party. I came to reclaim what they stole. My story, my truth, my voice. The video is ready, tucked into a file I named Episode 0, The Truth They Hid. It's 10 minutes of raw, unfiltered reality, and when it plays, they'll hear what unstable really sounds like. They'll hear Elaine's voice, not mine, weaving the lies that broke me. And they'll know I was never the broken one. I move toward the back of the room, my thumb grazing the remote in my pocket. The screen is set up for Lily and Caleb's montage, but I've got something else in mind. My heart pounds, not with fear, but with clarity. This house, these people, this lie. It ends tonight. I catch Lily's eye across the room, and she tilts her head, curious. I smile, and this time it's real. I'm not just Ava, the sister who left. I'm Ava, the counselor who listens, who heals, who knows what it means to be silenced. And tonight, I'm done being quiet. I wasn't always this quiet. There was a time when I screamed to be heard, when I thought if I just said it loud enough someone would listen. I was 17, all sharp edges and desperate hope, standing in the school counselor's office, my hands shaking as I tried to explain. My mom lies, I said, my voice cracking. She yells at me for things I didn't do, then acts like it never happened. She says I'm making it up, but I'm not. The counselor's face was kind, but her eyes were skeptical. She called Elaine. 2 days later, I was sitting in a psychiatrist's office, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic and judgment. Elaine had chosen him, of course. She sat beside me, her hands folded neatly, her voice smooth as glass. Ava's been emotional, she said. Overwhelmed, maybe even delusional. The doctor barely looked at me. He scribbled something, nodded, and handed me a prescription. Emotional instability, he wrote in my file. That label stuck to me like tar, and from then on, everything I said was just a symptom. I tried to fight it at first. I'd come home from school, my backpack heavy with books and anger, and I'd confront Elaine. You screamed at me last night, I'd say, my heart pounding. You said I broke the vase, but I wasn't even in the room. She'd tilt her head, her lips curving into a pitying smile. Ava, sweetheart, I never raised my voice. You're imagining things again. George would be there, standing in the doorway, his silence a wall I couldn't climb. He never contradicted her, never asked me if I was okay. His quiet was louder than her lies, carving out pieces of me until I started to wonder if she was right. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was the problem. That's the real poison of gaslighting. Not the yelling, not even the lies, but the way it erodes you, memory by memory, until you don't trust your own mind. Elaine was a master at it. She'd twist every moment, rewrite every fight. One day I'd spill juice on the counter and she'd scream that I'd ruined her day, that I was careless, ungrateful. The next morning she'd hum over breakfast, acting like nothing happened. And if I brought it up, she'd laugh. "Ava, you're so dramatic. I didn't say that." George would nod, his eyes on his coffee, and Lily, just 10 years old, would sit at the table, her spoon frozen halfway to her mouth, her big eyes watching me like she wanted to say something, but didn't know how. I thought she saw it, the truth, but she never spoke. And I couldn't blame her. She was just a kid, caught in the same web I was. The worst part wasn't the fights. It was what came after. When I was 15, I started noticing how Elaine would change her story in front of others. At family dinners, she'd tell everyone I was struggling, her voice dripping with concern, like she was the saint who had to deal with me. "Ava's always been sensitive," she'd say, patting my hand while aunts and uncles nodded sympathetically. "She gets these ideas in her head." I'd sit there, my face burning, wanting to scream that she was lying, but the words wouldn't come, because by then I wasn't sure anymore. Was I sensitive? Was I making it up? The doubt was like a splinter, burrowing deeper every time she spoke. By the time I was 17, I was drowning in it. The pills the doctor gave me made my head foggy, but they didn't stop the panic attacks or the nights I'd lie awake replaying every fight, trying to pin down what was real. I stopped talking about it. I stopped fighting back. I smiled in family photos, my eyes hollow, and I let Elaine's version of me take over. I was the unstable one, the dramatic one, the girl who couldn't be trusted, and the worst part, I believed it. I thought I was broken, that my mind was a maze I'd never escape. I stopped writing in my journal because I didn't know if my words were true. I stopped telling Lily how I felt because I was afraid she'd see me the way they did. I left home at 22, moving to a cramped apartment in Chicago, throwing myself into work. I studied psychology, became a mental health counselor, because I wanted to understand what had happened to me, to help others who felt trapped like I did. But even miles away, Elaine's voice followed me. "You're too sensitive," she'd say in my head. "You make things up." I blocked her number, changed how I thought of her. No longer mom, just Elaine. George became just George, a shadow I couldn't forgive. Lily stayed in touch, sending texts about her life as a freelance journalist, her articles digging into small-town secrets or forgotten histories. But we never talked about the past. It was like an unspoken rule: don't mention the house, don't mention the lies, don't mention me. I lived like that for years, carrying their voices, letting them define me. I was good at my job, helping clients navigate their own pain, but I couldn't fully heal my own. Not until last winter, when I sat across from Dr. Rachel Wynn, my therapist, in her cozy office with its soft lighting and endless boxes of tissues. Rachel had a way of asking questions that cut through the fog. One day she leaned forward, her eyes steady, and asked, "What made 17-year-old Ava feel safe?" I didn't even have to think. "Recording things," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "I used to carry a little camcorder everywhere, filming sunsets, stupid moments with Lily, even the sound of the wind. I called it my visual diary." Rachel's face lit up. "Do you still have those videos?" she asked. My breath caught. I hadn't thought about that camcorder in years. It was a cheap thing, barely bigger than my hand, with a red record button I'd press obsessively. I filmed everything: Lily giggling over ice cream, the neighbor's dog chasing its tail, the way the light hit the lake near our house. But I also filmed the other stuff. The stuff I didn't tell anyone about. I'd hide the camcorder in my backpack, clicking it on when Elaine started yelling, when she'd whisper to George about how to handle me. I told myself it was just for fun, a quirky habit, but deep down maybe I knew. Maybe I was collecting proof, even then, because some part of me refused to let her rewrite my story. I didn't sleep that night. Rachel's question kept circling in my head, pulling me back to that camcorder, to the girl I used to be. I knew it was still somewhere in that house, buried in the attic with the rest of my past. I called Elaine the next day, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "I need to grab some old stuff from the attic," I said. "Photo albums, maybe some books." She sighed, her voice flat. "Don't go digging up trouble, Ava." But I was already past listening. I was done letting her control the narrative. That camcorder wasn't just a relic, it was a time capsule, and I was ready to break it open. Dr. Rachel Wynn's question haunted me. "Do you still have those videos?" she'd asked, her voice gentle but piercing, like she knew the answer could unlock something I'd buried. I hadn't thought about that camcorder in over a decade, but the memory of it, the weight of it in my hand, the soft click of the record button, came rushing back. It was out there, somewhere in that house, tucked away in the attic like a secret I'd forgotten I'd kept. I knew I had to find it. Not just to prove something to myself, but to prove it to them. To Elaine, to George, to the family who'd spent years calling me unstable. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't broken. And those videos were my way back to the truth. I called Elaine a week after that therapy session, my fingers trembling as I dialed. "I need to stop by," I said, keeping my voice even. "There's some old stuff in the attic I want to grab, photo albums, maybe some high school things." She didn't ask why, just let out a sigh that carried years of dismissal. "Don't go stirring up the past, Ava," she said, her tone sharp, like she could sense I was reaching for something she didn't want me to touch. I didn't argue. I hung up, grabbed my keys, and drove to the house that had held me captive for so long. The whole way there, my heart pounded, not with fear, but with purpose. I wasn't the scared 17-year-old anymore. I was Ava, the counselor who'd helped others find their voices. Now, it was my turn. The house looked the same as always, its beige walls and perfect roses mocking me with their stillness. Elaine wasn't home, probably at one of her charity luncheons, playing the saint for strangers. George answered the door, his face lined with age and avoidance. "Attic's unlocked," he muttered, barely meeting my eyes before retreating to his armchair. I didn't need his permission, but his silence still stung, a reminder of all the times he let Elaine's lies stand. I climbed the creaky stairs to the attic, each step pulling me deeper into the past. The air up there was thick with dust and cedar, the smell of forgotten things. Boxes were stacked haphazardly, Christmas decorations, old lamps, my childhood sealed in cardboard and tape. It felt like a graveyard, and I was digging for my own ghost. I started searching, my hands moving faster than my thoughts. A box labeled Lily's school held report cards and a tiny clay handprint she'd made in kindergarten. Another, marked Misk, was stuffed with faded photo albums and a broken clock. My fingers brushed against a metal box, small and dented, tucked under a pile of old sweaters. My breath caught. It was one of those cheap lock boxes kids use for treasures, the kind you could pry open with a paperclip. My handwriting was scrawled across the top in faded marker. Ava's visual diary. I sat cross-legged on the attic floor, the box in my lap, my heart racing like I was 17 again. I popped the latch, and there it was. The camcorder, small and scratched, nestled among tangled earbuds and a couple of dead batteries. The red record button was worn smooth from use, a testament to the girl who refused to let her story vanish. I didn't wait. I drove straight back to my apartment, the lockbox rattling in the passenger seat. My hands shook as I plugged the camcorder into my laptop, praying the old mini DVDs hadn't degraded. The screen flickered, and for a moment I thought I'd lost it all. Then it loaded, a grainy image of me at 16, laughing as I filmed Lily chasing a butterfly in the backyard. Her giggles filled the room, and I smiled, my chest aching for the sisters we used to be. I fast-forward through hours of footage, sunsets, the lake, me narrating fake news reports to an imaginary audience. It was innocent, silly, the kind of stuff a lonely kid does to feel seen. But then the tone shifted. The screen showed a dark hallway, the camera shaky, my own breathing loud and uneven. "She's yelling again," I whispered, my teenage voice barely audible, and then Elaine's voice cut through, sharp and unmistakable. "Tell her it didn't happen, George. If we're consistent, she'll believe it." I froze, my hand hovering over the keyboard. My pulse thundered in my ears. For years I'd questioned that moment, wondered if I'd invented it, if my mind had betrayed me like they said. But there it was, caught in pixelated clarity. Her voice, her plan, her lie. I rewound and played it again, then again, each time feeling a piece of myself snap back into place. Another clip showed Elaine screaming at me for leaving dishes in the sink, her face red, her words venomous. "You're so careless, Ava, always causing trouble." The next clip, hours later, showed her calm, sipping tea, telling me I'd imagined the whole thing. George stood in the background, saying nothing, his silence as damning as her words. I sat there, tears streaming down my face, not from sadness, but from relief. I wasn't crazy. I never was. They'd just made me forget who I was. I spent weeks with those videos, transferring them to my laptop, sorting through hours of footage. Some were too blurry, others too painful, but every clip was a thread in the tapestry of my truth. I edited them into a single file, a 10-minute reel I called Episode 0, The Truth They Hid. I gave each segment a title, short and deliberate. 6:45 p.m., The First Lie, when Elaine blamed me for something I didn't do. 9:12 p.m., A Father's Silence, when George watched her scream and said nothing. 1:03 a.m., The Unstable Narrative Begins, when she whispered to him about sending me to a doctor. I didn't polish it. I didn't need to. The rawness was the point. The static, the shaky frames, my trembling voice. It was evidence, not art. As I worked, I thought about my job, about the clients I'd counseled through their own traumas. I'd always told them the truth starts with believing yourself. Now I was doing the same. I saved the file in 3 places: my laptop, a cloud drive, and the USB I'd carry to Lily's engagement party. I wasn't going to let this vanish again. Those videos weren't just proof for me. They were for Elaine, for George, for the family who'd believed their lies, and for Lily, who'd seen it all but stayed silent. I didn't know if she'd understand, but I hoped she would. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the girl I'd been. The one who'd hidden a camcorder in her backpack. Who'd known, even then, that the truth was worth saving. When I finished, I sat back, staring at the file on my screen. Episode 0. It felt like a beginning, not an end. I wasn't sure what would happen when I played it at the party, but I knew one thing. I was done letting Elaine write my story. The girl who'd recorded those videos had been braver than I ever gave her credit for. And now, I was ready to let her speak. The laptop screen glowed in my dark apartment, the file Episode 0, The Truth They Hid, staring back at me like a dare. I'd spent weeks with those videos, watching my 17-year-old self tremble, listening to Elaine's voice twist reality, hearing George's silence echo louder than any scream. Each clip was a piece of me I'd lost, a memory I'd been told wasn't real. Now they were stitched together into 10 minutes of undeniable truth. But truth alone wasn't enough. I had to make it sharp, make it cut through the lies Elaine had spun for years. Lily's engagement party was 3 days away, and I was turning those videos into a weapon, not for revenge, but for freedom. I opened my editing software, the familiar interface a comfort, like the tools I use to help my clients piece together their stories. As a mental health counselor, I'd learned how to listen, how to find the threads that matter in someone's pain. Now I was doing it for myself. I didn't want to polish the footage or make it pretty. The grainy quality, the shaky angles, the rawness, that's what made it real. I trimmed the long pauses not to hide them but to tighten the impact. Silence was evidence too, especially George's. I labeled each clip with a title, stark and deliberate. 6:45 p.m., the first lie, when Elaine blamed me for a mess I didn't make. 9:12 p.m., a father's silence, when George stood by as she raged. 1:03 a.m., the unstable narrative begins, when she plotted to send me to a doctor. Every title was a marker, a way to reclaim the story they'd stolen. Elaine's voice came through the static like a blade. "Tell her it didn't happen, George. If we're consistent, she'll believe it." I didn't flinch anymore. I'd heard it so many times it had lost its power to wound. Instead, it fueled me. I added one final clip, something I recorded myself, sitting in my apartment with the blinds drawn. My voice was calm, unshaken. "You said I was unstable, that I made it all up, but I had the camera on." That line wasn't for them. It was for me. A promise to the girl who'd hidden that camcorder in her backpack. She'd been brave enough to record the truth, and I wasn't going to let her down. I exported the file in 3 formats, obsessive about protecting it. One copy went to a cloud drive, another to my phone, and the third to the USB I'd carry in my purse. I wasn't taking chances. Elaine had a way of making things disappear. Memories, trust, me. Not this time. I even tucked a backup USB in my car's glove box, hidden under a stack of old receipts. It felt like overkill, but I'd spent too many years doubting myself to risk losing this. The truth was mine now, and I was guarding it like a treasure. Then came the delivery system. I needed something discreet, something that could slip into the party unnoticed but hit like a thunderclap when it played. I bought a small wireless remote, the kind that could connect to the big screen Elaine would have set up for Lily and Caleb's engagement montage. I tested it in my apartment, pairing it with my TV, watching the video flicker to life with a single click. The sound was clear, Elaine's voice filling the room, undeniable. I adjusted the volume, making sure every word would carry over the chatter of the party. I practiced the motion, reaching into my purse, pressing the button, until it felt as natural as breathing. The remote fit in my palm, small enough to hide, powerful enough to change everything. As I worked, I thought about Lily. She was 26 now, a freelance journalist chasing stories about forgotten people and buried truths. I wondered if she'd ever tried to uncover ours. She'd been so young when it all happened, just 10. Her eyes wide and helpless as Elaine tore me apart. I didn't blame her for staying quiet. She was a kid, trapped in the same house, the same lies. But she was an adult now, and she'd never asked, never reached out to say, "Ava, what really happened?" I didn't know if she'd be angry when I played the video, or if she'd finally see. I hoped she would. I hoped she'd hear Elaine's voice and remember the sister who'd tried to protect her, even when I couldn't protect myself. Elaine called the day before the party, her voice syrupy, the way it got when she was performing for an audience. "You're still coming, Ava?" she asked, like it was a casual question and not a test. Of course, I said, my tone light, my fingers tightening around the remote. Will you bring a guest? She pressed, probably hoping I'd show up alone, easier to manage. No, I replied, a smile creeping into my voice, just me. But I wasn't coming alone. I was bringing the 17-year-old Ava, the one they'd silenced, the one they'd gaslit into believing she was broken. She was ready to speak, and I was her megaphone. The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my couch, the USB in one hand, the remote in the other, replaying the video in my head. I wasn't nervous about what Elaine would say. She'd lie, she always did. I wasn't even worried about George's silence or the family's whispers. What kept me awake was the weight of what I was about to do. This wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. All those years I doubted my mind, questioned my memories, hated myself for being unstable. They ended here. As a counselor, I told my clients that healing starts with owning your story. Now, I was taking my own advice. I slipped the USB into my purse next to my keys and a half-used pack of gum, so ordinary it was almost funny. No one would suspect it held a decade of truth. I checked the remote one last time, the battery light blinking green. Everything was ready. The party was tomorrow, and I could already picture it. The clinking glasses, Elaine's perfect smile, Lily's nervous laughter. They thought they knew me. The Ava they'd written into their story, unstable, dramatic, broken. But they didn't know this Ava, the one who'd listened to her clients, who'd learned to trust herself, who'd found the courage to press record all those years ago. Tomorrow they'd meet her. Tomorrow they'd hear the truth. The party was in full swing, a glittering bubble of champagne and small talk, but I felt like I was standing outside it, watching it all through glass. Elaine moved through the crowd like a queen, her navy dress catching the light, her laughter a signal that everything was perfect. George lingered by the bar, his face half hidden in shadow, avoiding me as always. Lily and Caleb were the heart of it, surrounded by guests toasting their future, her white dress glowing under the fairy lights. I stood near the back, my purse heavy with the USB, my thumb brushing the remote in my pocket. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. This was it, the moment I'd been building toward, the moment I'd take back my story. The big screen at the front of the room flickered on, and the crowd hushed, expecting Lily and Caleb's engagement montage. Elaine raised a glass, her smile radiant, ready to bask in her daughter's spotlight. I took a step forward, my voice cutting through the quiet. Before we start, I said, loud enough to make heads turn, I'd like to share something. Elaine's smile faltered, just for a second, her eyes narrowing as they found me. Lily looked over, her brow creasing, but I didn't meet her gaze. I couldn't. I pulled the remote from my pocket and pressed the button. The screen didn't show Lily and Caleb's smiling faces. Instead, it was me, 17 years old, curled up in the corner of my bedroom, my face streaked with tears. The camera was shaky, hidden in my backpack, but my voice was clear, trembling. She's yelling again. Then Elaine's voice roared through the speakers, sharp and venomous. You're such a liar, Ava. You broke that lamp and now you're making it up. The room gasped, a collective inhale that sucked the air out of the party. Another clip played. Elaine, calm now, sipping coffee the next morning, saying, Ava, I never said that. You're imagining things. My teenage self sobbed in the background, pleading, but you did. The crowd was frozen, their eyes darting between the screen and me. Elaine's face drained of color, her glass trembling in her hand. George stared at the floor, his shoulders hunched, as if he could disappear into the carpet. Lily's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide, locked on the screen. Another clip rolled. Elaine whispering to George in the kitchen, her voice low but clear. "Tell her it didn't happen, George. If we're consistent, she'll believe it." A murmur rippled through the guests, shock turning to unease. I stood still, my gaze fixed on Elaine, watching her perfect mask crack. She lunged forward, her heels clicking furiously on the hardwood. "Turn that off," she snapped, reaching for the remote in my hand. I stepped back, holding it out of reach. "No," I said, my voice steady, louder than I expected. "Let it play." Before she could grab me, Lily was there, her hand on Elaine's arm. "Mom, stop," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "Let it run." Elaine froze, her eyes wild, searching for an escape, but the room was closing in. The video kept playing. Another moment, another lie. Elaine screaming that I'd skipped school, though I'd been home sick, then denying it hours later. Each clip was a nail in the coffin of her lies, and the crowd felt it, their whispers growing louder, their stares turning cold. Caleb stood beside Lily, his arm around her, but his face was unreadable. Aunts and cousins shifted uncomfortably, some looking away, others glaring at Elaine. George finally lifted his head, his eyes meeting mine for the first time in years, but he said nothing. The silence I'd always hated was now my ally, letting the video speak for me. The final clip played, my voice from just days ago, calm and unshaken. "You said I was unstable, that I made it all up, but I had the camera on." The screen went black, and the room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Elaine straightened, her jaw tight, trying to claw back control. "She edited that," she said, her voice high, cracking. "Ava's always been troubled, you know that." She looked around, desperate for someone to nod, to agree, but no one did. The guests were still processing, their faces a mix of shock and disgust. Lily stepped forward, her eyes wet but fierce. "Mom, that was you," she said, her voice breaking. "That's your voice." Elaine's mouth opened then closed, her hands trembling now, no longer reaching for the remote but clutching her dress like it could hold her together. I turned to Lily, my chest tight. "I'm sorry it had to be tonight," I said, my words soft but clear, but I couldn't carry it anymore. She looked at me, tears spilling over, and nodded, just once, like she was seeing me for the first time. I wanted to say more, to tell her I didn't mean to steal her moment, but the weight of the room was too much. Elaine's face was a mask of fury, her eyes boring into me, but I didn't flinch. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of her. The truth was out, loose in the air, and no amount of her lies could pull it back. I slipped the remote into my purse, my fingers brushing the USB, and turned toward the door. The crowd parted, no one stopping me, no one speaking. Their silence wasn't judgment now, it was acknowledgement. They'd heard Elaine's voice, seen my tears, felt the weight of a decade of lies. As I reached the doorway, I glanced back at Lily. She was still standing by the screen, Caleb's arm around her, her eyes locked on me. I didn't know what she was thinking, but I knew she'd heard me. For the first time in years, someone had. I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my face like a release. Behind me, the party was unraveling. Muted voices, Elaine's pacing, the clink of glasses gone quiet. I didn't need to stay to know what would happen next. The truth was enough. I'd carried it for so long, and now it was free, just like me. I stood on the porch, the night air cool against my skin, the hum of the party fading behind me. The weight of what I'd done, playing that video, letting Elaine's lies spill out for everyone to hear, settled over me, not heavy but freeing, like shedding a skin I'd worn too long. I thought I'd walk to my car, drive away, Leave the wreckage of that house behind. But before I could take another step, the door creaked open, and Lily was there, her white dress catching the moonlight, her eyes red from tears. "Ava, wait," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to talk to you." I turned, expecting an apology, maybe anger for stealing her spotlight. Instead, she reached into her clutch and pulled out a USB identical to mine, its black plastic glinting in the dark. My stomach dropped. "What's that?" I asked, though some part of me already knew. She swallowed hard, her fingers trembling as she held it out. "I recorded things too," she said, her words breaking. "After you left, Mom started on me. The world tilted. Lily, my little sister, the one I thought had escaped Elaine's web, had been caught in it too." I took the USB, my hand shaking now, and looked at her, waiting. "She told me I was useless," Lily said, her voice cracking. "That I'd never be anything without her, that I was too weak to survive on my own. I'd come home from writing gigs, proud of some article I'd published, and she'd tear it apart, say it was nothing, say I was nothing. Then the next day, she'd act like it never happened." Her eyes met mine, raw and pleading. "I started recording her a few years ago, when I couldn't trust my own head anymore. I'm a journalist, Ava. I know how to find evidence, but I was too scared to use it. Until tonight." I clutched her USB, my heart splintering. All those years I'd thought Lily was spared, that she'd lived free while I carried the scars, but Elaine had just waited, turning her lies on the daughter who stayed. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice thick with tears. Lily's lips trembled. "I thought you hated me for not speaking up when we were kids. I thought you'd moved on." She stepped closer, her hand finding mine. "But you were so brave tonight. You gave me the courage I never had." We stood there, two sisters under the Chicago moonlight, holding each other's truths. I pulled her into a hug, fierce and tight, the kind we hadn't shared since she was a kid chasing butterflies in the backyard. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, not for the party but for the years we'd lost, for the pain we'd both carried alone. She clung to me, her sobs muffled against my shoulder. "We're not alone anymore," she said, and I felt it. The bond we'd almost lost, stronger now because of the truth. I didn't go back inside. Elaine was still there, pacing, her lies exposed. But I didn't need to see her fall. Lily and I walked to my car, the USBs in our hands, twin keys to our freedom. We weren't just survivors now. We were storytellers, ready to speak. Lily and I didn't go back to the party. We drove to my apartment, the USBs in our pockets, our truths finally shared. That night we sat on my couch talking until dawn, piecing together the years we'd lost to Elaine's lies. We weren't just sisters anymore. We were allies, bound by the courage to face what we'd survived. A week later, we started a podcast, Sisters Unsilenced, pouring our stories into it. My voice, steady from years as a mental health counselor, wove through Lily's, sharp and searching from her life as a freelance journalist. We played our videos, mine from a teenager's shaky camcorder, hers from a hidden phone, letting Elaine's words echo for the world to hear. Thousands listened, their messages flooding in, stories of their own gaslighting, their own healing. We weren't alone anymore. I didn't see Elaine again. I didn't need to. The truth was out, and I was free. Lily and I kept recording, each episode a step toward rebuilding what was taken. One night I stepped outside. The Chicago air crisp with autumn, the moon casting silver on the street. Leaves swirled in gentle spirals, and I smelled wood smoke, freedom, peace. I smiled, not for anyone else, but for me. I wasn't Ava, the unstable girl they'd tried to erase. I was Ava, the counselor, the sister, the storyteller who'd held a camera and never let go. Lily and I had taken back our voices, and we weren't giving them up. The truth was ours now, and under that quiet sky, I knew it always would be.